This is Ashutosh.
Yes.
Perhaps with one of the most versatile and massive experiences possible in the class of 23 MBAEx IIM, and with Ashutosh we are going to talk about the topic, which is IoT, automotive, quality check, and so on and so on and so on. So Ashutosh, please begin with your work experience.
So thank you for giving me this opportunity. So I would say that I have worked for 11 years, approximately 8 years in Maruti Suzuki, which is a iconic industry in terms of Indian automobile industry, and then 3 years in Bajaj Auto, which is again like a company which has rejuvenized the automobile industry, first with Chetak brand and then with Pulsar brand. So it was really delighted for me to work in these companies. So I will start with my journey. So after graduating as an engineer, I joined Maruti Suzuki in quality division, where I was assigned with the task of problem solving and handling of vendor parts.
Okay.
So this mainly included the resolution of the day-to-day defects which were reported in our production line, and this consisted of the problem solving approach, which requires us to go through the root cause analysis and why analysis approaches and jot down to a root cause for which we can resolve. And during that resolution, I developed critical and analytical thinking capabilities, which helped me in my later career also. So for resolution of these defects, IoTs and automations were the major parts which we used because they generally avoids the human errors and brings out the consistency and repeatability in system and processes. So we were using extensively automations and IoTs. Then in the later part of my career, I was made lead for the product and process development for the new models. With these skills, the management focused on the IoTs and automations for taking care of the process and product designs and development stages from the beginning only. So with that, I have worked on various models like Swift, S-Cross, Brezza, Ignis, and the one which is the most proudest moment for me is I have worked on the first commercial vehicle of Maruti, which was Super Carry.
Okay.
So in that, we worked with Japanese and Indonesian and European counterparts because to understand the technical criticalities of these products, because for Maruti in India there was no such product. So we have to bring out the learning from the outside. And we were having a close collaboration and joint working with them in order to understand the technical and process capabilities which will be required to implement in India. So that were again driven by the IoTs and automation technologies which were not that developed at that time in India in automotive industries. So when I was working in the product and process design, I not only was able to hone my technical capabilities, but was also able to deep dive into the managerial capabilities. Like when in this role, I was not only taking care of the development side, I have to manage a product according to its life cycle.
Okay.
So it gave me an exposure of how to manage a product in its life cycle completely, and how to develop a product and how to manage it, and how to take data from the customer, from the market, from the like IoT devices which we have implemented, and use that data for the future improvements. I was moved to the core strategic department under the senior leadership of CEOs and directors, where my day-to-day activities included mainly data analysis, which we gather from across the company, all the plants, across the different nations also. So basic data analysis and giving insights to top management based on that data. Then the day-to-day activities included like assessing the systems, quality systems, processes, products, whether they are meeting the needs of the internal and external customers, and making changes in them. That included strategic formulations and implementations also up to a certain extent, and this gave me an insight into the senior roles, like what our directors used to do, how they manage the large projects and large teams.
Okay.
Then with this experience, I was transitioned into department manager role at Bajaj Auto, where I was heading the quality for the KTM brands. And during that exposure, I came to know the actual power of IoTs and automations.
Okay.
When the recall was made mandatory by SIAM and government, it was made mandatory with the penalization also, heavy penalization. So it forces automobile OEMs to think about some strict measures and controls at vendor processes and internal processes also, to avoid any defect generation, because these critical processes can lead to safety issues which can be fatal to customers. So we identified more than 120 processes, implemented IoT at those processes, through which we can monitor real time data with an app and can control them also to a certain extent.
Okay.
So this really gave me an exposure, and it brings IoT and automation has bring out sense of urgency, speed and transparency also in the whole system.
Been talking a lot about IoT, automation and your exposure to it.
Yeah.
So a more generic but nevertheless a debatable discussion that is on now. What is the scope of these emerging technologies in different firms?
So when I hear about emerging technologies like IoT, automation, cloud, I remember a quote which was generally quoted by Professor Devashish Saha, who taught us about these technologies in term 1 at IMC.
Okay.
So he used to say, before others disrupt you, you disrupt them.
Okay.
So it is always beneficial to bring a change into the market and not be at the recipient end and do customizations in your organizations to adapt to that change. You will be a market leader then. So IoT and automation also forms a core part of these technologies. So when I say that what is the scope of IoT and automation, generally people link IoT and automation only to core manufacturing processes.
Okay.
So if we see the broader scope of IoT and automation, we can say that as a consultants, now consulting firms for optimization of their clients' processes and systems, they are implementing IoTs and automations at their end. Suppose at an FMCG client, if I am a consultant at an FMCG client, I want to implement IoT and automation.
Okay.
It has a very wide scope. I can implement IoT across the processes, right from the input stage to the output truck which was going. So, and every stakeholder has their different perspectives to that, and every stakeholder can access differently. Like a quality manager can see what are the rejection percentages across the processes. A supply chain manager can see whether my inputs are coming at time or not. An operations manager can see whether my production is going as per the demand rate or not, and that too in the real time. In olden days, it was used to be like a blackboard system or an and-on system.
Okay.
But it used to be a real-time information.
Okay.
And it makes visualization also better. Lot of time goes into report preparations, data preparation. These systems, we can prepare a pre-formatted dashboards and reports, and we can fetch reports at any time. So it saves a lot of cost, money, efforts and time.
Okay.
In terms of manpower also. So it has a very wider scope. It is not limited to only manufacturing, core manufacturing. It can be implemented at various processes also. So similar is the case with the automation also. Generally people link automation only with the robots. Whenever we hear about automation, we think about only robots. It is not like that. Automation is defined as anything which we can automate.
Okay.
Not necessarily only through robot. So if we can give example, we can say that like a CNC machine, earlier lathe machine was there, same job is done automated in CNC machine. So CNC is a type of automation without a robot. Also a broader automation example can be say autonomous cars, fully autonomous cars, which are provided by Tesla nowadays, and they have not only modified the automotive market, they have created a new segment all of automotive.
Okay.
And as per the top firms reports, by 2030, these fully autonomous vehicles will constitute around 15% of the global automotive sales.
Okay.
So this is a very critical part of automations and IoTs. They are not only transforming the current market, they are creating new segments, new businesses altogether, which will be like growing at any pace and rates. So nowadays we have connected vehicles also. In connected vehicles, like in India, MG Hector was the first connected vehicle which was launched. But if you go outside in US and Europe, they have a much more advanced version of the connected vehicles. Now India is also going ahead into this segment. If we say about connected vehicles, these vehicles remain connected to each other through internet, which can be used widely in fleet management systems by firms like Ola, Uber, or any taxi, or like Dunzo also.
Okay.
They can know instantly that where these vehicles are moving, real time data. And then at individual level, we can use our mobile app to control that vehicle, whether to start 5 minutes earlier on a hot sunny day. We can start the vehicle, put the AC on while leaving before 5 minutes, and that vehicle can be at the normal temperature. So it will be in country like India with such tropical climate, it will be very beneficial. So next trend in IoT is shared mobility. It was prevalent earlier also, but nowadays it is becoming a demand of generation Z and millennials, because they don't want to own the vehicles. They don't want to go into the intricacies of taking loans, managing the vehicle, operating their expenses. They just want to have their need fulfilled of transportation. So how they are doing it? They are sharing their resources. They are sharing their mobility resources. But what comes into that? It should be transparent, because the owner of that resource should not charge any unjustified amount from the users.
Okay.
So IoT is fulfilling that need. IoT integrates with an app on your mobile, and it will tell you how much distance you have traveled, what was the mileage, and it can calculate what was the expense for your trip, and you can just pay online and leave the car. So it brings about transparency also in the system, and this transparency is helping that market to gain.
Okay.
So again, if we say that shared mobilities and connected vehicle market, it is estimated to contribute to $1.5 trillion in 2030. So it again, as I earlier said, it is again not only transforming but also creating bringing it to a scale of such an extent of $1.5 trillion. So for achieving the effectiveness, nowadays what is the trend? IoT alone can also work for monitoring, and for controls we can use automation. So now we are coupling them together, and that is what IoT plus automation is resulting into Industry 4.0. But I will not say it Industry 4.0, because generally people link it to manufacturing only.
Yeah.
I will call it as IoT 4.0, because that will explain the power of IoT and automation properly.
Oh.
It is not only about industry, it can be implemented in products also.
Okay.
It can be implemented in processes also. So I can give you an example, like GE manufactures jet engines. So it implements IoT and automations in those engines, and as far as those engines are working alive, GE their headquarters at US can see the data performance of those engines, and can control also to a certain extent, can predict maintenance before the failure.
Okay.
And can gather data. And how they are using that data? Data is the new oil. So they are using that data to assess the needs of the customer.
Okay.
How much on a single flight, how engine is behaving on a flight, what are the parameters, on what range these parameters are lying. So all these data is helping those product managers in GE to improvise their product for the market and save cost also. Suppose if we take an example of a water purifier, IoT water purifier can give data to a product manager at that water purifier manufacturer, that at evening and morning is the maximum consumption hours, and in afternoon the consumption is very less or negligible. So in afternoon that water purifier can go into the sleep mode. That can again save my energy cost and operational cost. So these type of technologies are transforming the industry in a very broad manner, which we can say that are helping. People are saying that IoT comes with a cost, but if you see its ROI, It's beyond that. As to summarize, automation and IoT, or as you can say IoT 4.0, is a very versatile technology which is against the orthodox thought process of only a manufacturing oriented technology, and it has a very wider scope, and not only at manufacturing, at consulting also, at product managing also, at operations also. So we can use it at any area which is which wants to reap its benefits.
Wow. So this was Ashutosh with IoT 4.0, and Ashutosh, I'm sure you have a great future in the corporate.
Thank you.
You can also think of academic lecturing if you want to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wish you all the
Thank you.
best.
Thank you.